Welcome into the NFL Opening Line Report, Week 3 of the preseason, the final preseason show here before we get you ready for NFL regular season. I am Drew Martin, joined as always by the man, the myth, the legend, Teddy Covers. Teddy, we got, 2 on Thursday, 3 on Friday, the West coming the weekend. Welcome on in, buddy. How you feeling this Monday?
Well, I'm good from an information standpoint. I'm crappy from a picks perspective. It has not been a good preseason, unfortunately, for the clients and I. And I'm, more frustrated than you. Again, you don't want to make yourself too crazy about the preseason, but I don't like shooting offers, and we're shooting an offer right now. So that's not good. And losing, frustrating losses, a couple of tough beats, a couple of 2-point conversions don't go your way on the money line games. It's been a little bit annoying when it comes to the postseason. That being said, again, if I'm going to get rocked, I'd rather do it in August than September. So let's take the tough beats now. I said that after the Hall of Fame game over got canceled. I'm like, if we're going to take bad beats, take them now. Nonetheless, I think we have some good info, and hopefully we'll have some better results this last weekend. Certainly from a entertainment standpoint, I've watched a lot of preseason. This week 2 of the preseason felt like the old week 4s of the preseason. Man, there was some ugly football, as fully evidenced by the fact that the games went 14-2 to the under based on the closing numbers this last week. And only 2 games got up and over the total. Lots of ugly football and lots of quotes and reports about ugly football that we just saw.
All right, Teddy, let's get into it, guys, as we got first game up here Thursday, August 22nd. 5 o'clock Pacific, 105, 106, the rotation numbers. We are going down in rotation order here, guys. Indianapolis Colts, Cincinnati Bengals. Saw this open up 2.5. That was the Colts as the road favorite. We are seeing -3, even a 3.5 out there now, Teddy. 35 and a hook being the total. What are we thinking Colts and Bengals to kick us off?
So Indy coming off a positive performance. Well, Arizona made a bunch of mistakes, but Indy did get, 166 on the ground. Shane Steichen, quote, I think we went for 166 on the ground with all those guys that were battling, scratching, and clawing, which was good to see. This game was an opportunity for our assistant coaches, too. A lot of guys called the game throughout on both sides of the fall. It was fun to listen to everyone call it. So Steichen's letting the assistants call plays. They run the football. What they were able to do was run the ball effectively against a team that didn't have a whole lot of defensive depth in the front seven. It wasn't like there was all this bet on for Indy. And in fact, it was Arizona that took the money in that ball game. From a Cincinnati standpoint, look, Zach Taylor is not putting his best players in harm's way. The starters weren't going to play. Logan Woodside and Rocky Lombardi, that is not a bet on QB combo for August. And that's a duo that saw playing time this past week. I'm not convinced we're going to see anything different this time around. And, of course, Cincy, 11 penalties, 123 yards. Zach Taylor, after the game, quote, there was just some things that should be avoidable. There's nothing to do with talent. It's nothing to do with scheme. Just do a better job operationally handling some of those situations. So from an urgency standpoint, more urgency for Cincy than for Indy this week. From a player rotation standpoint, well, Bengals are a team that is very concerned about August injuries. They're not playing anyone, and that's reflected in this number with the early money coming for the Colts. Let me be very clear, by the way, Drew. This is not a mature marketplace. We have a handful of books that have posted. Those handful of books have already taken bets. So we talk about the line moves off those openers, but more than half the books haven't posted up numbers yet. So this is anything but a mature market. Here in Las Vegas, basically haven't seen a whole lot of books post at all. So for this town here in Sin City, most assuredly not a mature market. We're just seeing a sense of what the numbers are going to be. And obviously here, money for Indy. No one wants Cincy when Cincy doesn't care and they're not playing any of their starters. That was the case last week. And that may well be the case this week as well. Although, again, Zach Taylor not amused by their mental miscues and penalties this past weekend.
Well said, Teddy. And guys, to Teddy's point, if you go to the WagerTalk live odds screen, it's free. Check it out. You can kind of compare the sports books there. We got a couple global books out with numbers. and then actually one in the U.S. as well. So that's where you can kind of compare it, guys. As we move 20 minutes later, 5:20 Pacific kickoff, second game up on Thursday, Teddy. It's the Chicago Bears and the Kansas City Chiefs. Bears -3 in the hook. They've been bumped up about a full point here. 34.5 to 35.5 be the total. So I guess we could call it the nightcap on Thursday. Bears at Chiefs, Teddy.
Yeah, we've got numbers at a handful of, Play MGM has numbers, DraftKings has numbers, Bet365 has numbers. So it's not like nobody's got numbers up in the States yet. There are a good handful of legalized, regulated books that do, but the majority of books don't yet as we record on Monday morning. Bears have taken money. I'm not surprised. The Bears have shown a lot of bet on this preseason. And again, this past weekend, Caleb Williams cares, although I'm not convinced we're going to see much, if any, of Caleb Williams this week. Tyson Bagent came in and threw a couple of touchdown passes at 151.6 QB rating. And then Brett Rippon is exactly the kind of type of QB you don't mind having on your side in the fourth quarter of these preseason games. So Chicago has shown real bet on this August, and the markets have caught up by now. They've taken money in every game, and once again, taking money here against Kansas City. And bettors got burned again. But Andy Reid does it every year, and I'm kicking myself for not betting it the other way. To me, that was the one. That was the low-hanging fruit that I missed this weekend, was a Lions plus. But Andy Reid every year is like, oh, yeah, we're going to play our starters for a half, well, maybe a little bit less. And Patrick Mahomes went in and played 2 series, 2 field goals. All right, hit the bench, Patrick. He threw that behind-the-pack pass that everyone's still talking about. Reid's quote, by the way, he does it in practice every day. I'm all right with it as long as it's a completion. Fun, cool to watch. But Kansas City could care less about winning games in August, and the markets are definitely reflecting that here with the Chicago money. I do not expect that we'll see Patrick Mahomes and company this week. Reid tends to play his starters, or at least the last couple of years it's been week 2 you get the starters, and week 3 you get nobody. And the market's showing that they're telling us that pretty clearly with the Chicago money coming in. Worth noting, Drew, we talked last week about all the over money coming in, and over money's coming on every game, and over money. Well, at the close, unders went 14-2. At the open, 13-3 to the under. So whoever was betting all that over money for week 2 of the NFL preseason, it was multiple bettors. It was a full market move. Those guys got burned pretty badly after what was not a pretty offensive week 2 of the preseason. Well, it was pretty offensive, but the offense wasn't very good. If you like good offense, it was offensive. Yes. Lots of red zone miscues.
Yeah, somebody out there is hurting a lot. If you watched last week, guys, the numbers were moving towards the over, and obviously the wrong side of that. So good point there, Teddy. As we move on to the Friday, August 23rd card here, guys. Top of it, 4 o'clock Pacific kick here. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars, Atlanta Falcons. We are seeing the Jags heavy road favorites here. We don't see a lot of 7s in NFL preseason, Teddy, but we get it here. -7, that's the Jags as the road favorite. 35.5 being the total downtown Atlanta.
Yeah, and one thing the books do not do in August is dawdle around. Boom, you have a limit bet on Jacksonville. Boom, you have a second one. They're not going to go, okay, let's move from 4.5 to 5. They're going to let's move from 4.5 to 6 or 6.5 or 7. A couple limit bets, boom, and the markets changed like that. And that's what's happened this morning. The Jags opened 4.5. Now we're seeing 7s right now. And I'm real curious. This is something I'm going to look real quick to see how many different bets it took to get there. I'm taking the under. Yeah, go 4.5 to 5 to 5.5 to 6.5 to 7. The 5.5 was too. Was fewer bets than you might think. I'll just leave it at that. That sent it that way. And the Jags set basically all their starters this past week and played fine. Mac Jones, 210 yards and 2 touchdowns, 20-7 victory, 16-23 in that ball game, and he had 6 scrambles. Showed some mobility. His quote: "Just got to keep carrying the momentum. It's a 1-week season. Everyone always says that. The preseason too. You got to stack good games and move on to the next one." Jacksonville doesn't care. I don't think they care, and they're certainly not. Now Lawrence is likely to get some PT here. All right, that's what this move to 7 is. It's saying that Trevor Lawrence, who sat last week, could get some playing time. But I think it has much more to do with Atlanta and the fact that it doesn't look like that Atlanta's going to, Cousins is going to go, Penix isn't going to go. Tyler Heineke and John Paddock, that's not a bet on QB combination, as we saw this past week. And that's what I think the money coming for the Jags is. It could be some Jacksonville's in the starters. It's certainly a lot of Atlanta isn't looking like they're going to bring their A game. Hence the early money for Jacksonville in the markets this morning.
Moving down the list here, guys. Heading to the Sunshine State, a Sunshine State battle here. It's the Miami Dolphins and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 4:30 Pacific kick in this one, Teddy. We are seeing -2 in the hook. That's the Dolphins as the road favorite. There is a key -3 out there. 34.5 or 35 being the total. It's the Dolphins at the Bucs from Raymond James.
Yeah, Tua 5 for 5 with a touchdown pass in his only series this past week. And what we've seen from Mike McDaniel in previous preseasons, again, he's had 2 previous preseasons. Tua sat out the first game. Tua sat out the last game. He got a brief appearance in the middle game, and that's what happened here. And it's worth noting on that drive where he went 5 for 5 with a touchdown, his only series, Miami went for it twice on 4th down, converted them both. Mike McDaniel's like, Mike McDaniel's like, let's get our guy some reps in that regard. And, of course, it's definitely worth noting that Miami, for the second consecutive game, closed out the fourth quarter with like a goal line stand, stop on downs inside the 10-yard line. So their third and fourth string defenders have gotten the job done with the game on the line in each of the last couple of weeks. Tampa, the 31 guys didn't play this past week. Anyone who's starting or might start for Tampa was on the sideline. Todd Bowles, not a guy who's worried too much about winning these games in August. Kyle Trask, 12 of 19 for 108 yards and a TD. Todd Bowles, quote, he played with poise. Defense didn't give the offense enough opportunities to have the ball from a dink and dunk plays and missed tackle standpoint, but he played with a lot of poise and took advantage of the time when he had time to throw. Again, Tampa's not a team that tends to worry about these games. I'm not sure Miami is either. And that's, one of these 2.5s. Markets don't know yet. They really don't. And hence, 34.5 is also telling here as well. That's as low a total as we're going to see for a week 3 game. A handful of 34/34.5s out there tells us that the betting markets don't expect a lot of starters to see action.
Teddy, I got a question for you. And guys, NFL opening line report each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, going throughout the Super Bowl. So come back and join us, and feel free to chime in any questions in the comments below. We'll answer them on the next week's show. We got a couple from last week we'll get into. And feel free to chime in the chat box as well. But Teddy, one question here before we get to the next game, because it's kind of correlated with it. I was actually watching the games on Saturday with my mom, and we were talking about the regionality of the NFL preseason. I've noticed this for years. Like, look at it. It's Jacksonville, Atlanta, Miami versus Tampa. It was just Jacksonville versus Tampa last week. What I'm getting at is, have you noticed that the NFL schedule makers in the preseason, they just play the teams close to them? It's almost like each and every year. Do you know what's behind that in the scheduling?
Yeah, the guys don't want to go on cross-country trips in August, so they don't. They don't want the East Coast teams traveling west. They don't want the West Coast teams traveling east. You tend to play, matchups from the other league that are relatively close. From the AFC teams tend to play more NFC teams and vice versa. You're surely not playing any, obviously no division games, but it tends to be out of league games. And then all of these are, an AFC team against an NFC team that we're talking about right here as well. But they're just trying to minimize travel, minimize wear for the players. From a handicapping standpoint, it's nothing you can make money off of, so it's nothing I'm really worried about.
Okay, now it makes total sense. And speaking to another one here, San Francisco, the 49ers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. This is the nightcap on Friday, guys, 7 o'clock Pacific kick here. I'm seeing -2 now? Is that the 49ers as the road favorite, even 2 and a hook out there, 37 being the total in the desert, Teddy?
Yeah, first bets have come heavy for San Fran. Was interesting. The Raiders, of course, they took a ton of money this last week, and then they had, because they had a quarterback battle with Minshew and O'Connell. O'Connell basically threw a pick 6 that cost him the job or was it a pick six? It was an interception in the end zone that was returned a ways. That essentially cost him the job, and Minshew got it. So they've solved their quarterback battle. What does that mean for this game? Well, the betting markets aren't sure they're going to play anyone. But San Fran doesn't care. San Fran has cluster injuries. They're a banged-up football team. They're not a team that's worried about in the slightest winning this preseason game. So the money coming in so far is much more fading the Raiders than it's been backing the 49ers, even though the money's been coming in on San Fran. Again, the injuries that the 49ers have are concerning enough that it's affected their prep. And I'm surprised that they've taken as much money as they have. But again, we're not talking about a mature marketplace, and you can be confident that the Raiders, now that they've solved their QB problem, might not see either guy this week. And it could be the back end of the bench for Las Vegas when it comes to their quarterback rotation in the preseason finale. And as we saw with some of those end of the bench games over the weekend, there are some elite preseason quarterback combinations, and there aren't. And certainly when you talk about if the Raiders don't play, and again, this is all just if, I'm speculating, but if they don't play O'Connell or Minshew, it's not exactly a who's who of likely good quarterback play for Vegas.
Teddy, we get the Saturday card up next, August 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific kick. LA Rams, Houston Texans. Texans -6 in the hook, 34. There is a 33.5 out there as the total. Rams at Texans. Just kick us off on Saturday.
Look, from a who's got the best quarterback rotation for preseason football standpoint, the Texans can certainly make a case. You know, you've had C.J. Stroud, you've had Case Keenum, you've had Tim Boyle. You know, you have a young quarterback who's trying to make some noise, and you have two veterans behind him who are battling for a backup job and are both capable of moving an offense. That is an elite preseason trio. And the Texans have been one of the only offenses this August that has worked consistently. And they've played 3 games, obviously, not 2. They were in the Hall of Fame game opener against the Bears. So a lot of positive signs for Houston right now, and the market's certainly reflecting that with the 6.5 for this ball game. The Rams are 2-0 this preseason, and they won both games despite scoring 13 or less. If you watched either of LA's 2 preseason games, they were as ugly as anything you're going to see all year. The Rams didn't care any more or less than their opponents did. They don't care. McVay could care less about these games. Now, don't be fooled. Any coach, all right? You get the ball down with, you get the ball back with a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. You're trailing by 1 score. Now that's a meaningful drive. Yeah, I care about winning this game. Yeah, we're going to go for 2 if we score the touchdown. There's a sense of urgency with the 2-minute drives, even when it's a 4-minute drive or a 6-minute drive near the end of the game. But in general, McVay is not a coach who gives 2 hoots about August. The markets have reflected that in every game. And again, they scored 13 or less in their 2 preseason games. A far cry defensively where they were last year. Remember, the defense gave up like 90 points in the 3 preseason games last year. That hasn't been the case this year. But from a quarterback rotation standpoint, or the coach that cares standpoint, the Texans clear chalk over LA, and that's reflected in the early number.
117, 118 up next, 10 a.m. Pacific kick. Baltimore Ravens, Green Bay Packers. Ravens -1 flat across the board, 34 being the total in Lambeau, Teddy.
So how much is the coach? How much is the quarterback rotation? Baltimore under Harbaugh was the best preseason team any of us have ever seen. Winning games, covering point spreads, winning games, covering point spreads, winning games, covering point spreads, not just for a year, for 2 years, for many years. The Ravens this year have scored 13 and 13 points in their 2 games. This is a team that has scored 17 or more in every preseason game since 2018. They'd scored 20 or more in 15 of their 18 preseason games since 2018. Every year, they've had a good backup quarterback. They've had a third-string quarterback who can make plays with his feet as well as his arm. This year, Baltimore, well, there may be some more concerns about the backup QB position than we've seen in recent seasons for Baltimore. And I think Harbaugh didn't want that win streak anymore. He didn't want that pressure. He's like, we got enough pressure in the regular season. So Baltimore's long-term track record versus their current form, again, they scored 13 and 13 in the 2 games this postseason. That's not bet-on material for August. Of course, hard to say how much the Packers care. Matt LaFleur wasn't happy with the game this past weekend. Again, he sat 31 players. Every starter for the Packers didn't play in that ballgame, but Green Bay got annihilated. In the actual game, the joint practices were fine, but quote Matt LaFleur's quote after the game: "That was a long night. I was hoping our guys would come out with more strain, effort, grit. We're kind of getting humbled the other day in practice, and to have it happen again wasn't where we want to be. It was a good lesson for our guys in terms of it doesn't matter who's out there. If you don't put your best foot forward each and every time you go on that field, these things can happen to you." So is there more urgency for Green Bay than there is for Baltimore? Yes. Is that going to matter on the field? Not necessarily. Is Baltimore bet on moving forward based on that long-term preseason track record? In this bettor's opinion, absolutely not.
When the fundamentals change, we got to change the handicap there, guys. Good stuff, Teddy. As we move down the list, also 10 a.m. Pacific kick here. Carolina Panthers, Buffalo Bills. Bills -4 in the hook across the board, 34 being the total here.
Yeah, Carolina's, they looked awful in that preseason debut against the Pats. And they took money against the Jets, as they're supposed to. Rookie coach, home opener, Jets don't care. And Carolina looked every bit as awful, certainly offensively, against the Jets as they did against the Pats. Now, they did score a touchdown this time on the final play of the game. There were zeros on the clock, still lost 15-13. And they got 15 points against the Jets team that played Adrian Martinez and Andrew Peasley at quarterback for the full 60 minutes. So Carolina, again, they took money last week. I don't know if they're going to take any more money right now. The Panthers have looked very much like the team that was the worst team in football last year. Of course, the Bills, one of only 2 teams in preseason action that has 0 touchdowns through 2 games. And it's worth noting, again, the previous 2 years, Buffalo was ranked among the preseason leaders in yardage differential. All right, the offense moved the ball. The defense got stops. They did it last year. They did it the year before. And that, in my mind, was meaningful. McDermott, another one of these coaches that has a great preseason track record. And, oh, by the way, they won this past week against Pittsburgh after losing in their opener, where McDermott was not amused by how well or how poorly they played. But given the Bills' track record in preseasons and yardage, and given the fact that they haven't scored a touchdown yet, Benny Mark is saying there's at least some urgency here for Buffalo. Though I have no idea if we're going to see anything resembling a starter for the Bills. There's definitely some, after last week, a little bit of anti-Panthers sentiment in the markets. Carolina has looked pretty awful offensively through their first 2 preseason games.
We got the next 10 a.m. Pacific kick up next, as there's 5 of them here on Saturday, guys. It's 1-2-1, 1-2-2, Pittsburgh Steelers, Detroit Lions. We are seeing the Steelers -3 flat across the board, 35 in the hook being the total. Steelers at Lions from the Motor City, Teddy.
Yeah. I usually drink tea, and I ran out of time between my 2 shows this morning, so I didn't get to make a tea. So I'm like, all right, I got to grab something. So I'm a pepper, you're a pepper, we're all peppers today. This show not sponsored by Dr. Pepper. They don't believe in gambling, so don't gamble if you drink Dr. Pepper. I'm kidding. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm channeling Prez for Lions Steelers. Steelers, 10 drives with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields on the field. Those 10 drives combined for a field goal. Oops. Offensive line is supposed to be improved this year. They gave up 4 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, and that was why Wilson and Fields didn't get going. Mike Tomlin, quote, "We didn't do a good enough job protecting the quarterback. That can't be a problem for us. We've got to be better than we were tonight in that area." That's urgency. That's why, in part at least, why Pittsburgh is favored. Second, we may well see both Fields and Wilson again this week for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson's always such the optimist. I I appreciate him for that, even though he makes me laugh sometimes. But Russell, the one thing you've seen over the year after year, Russell Wilson was always like, yeah, it's not quite as bad as you think it is. Russell Wilson, quote, so there's a lot of good things that goes unseen sometimes. And yeah, there's some things we have to fix to get right. So that's the diligence that we have to have. But Wilson's like, it wasn't as bad as it looked. Okay, maybe it wasn't. It was still pretty bad. Dan Campbell sat his starters again, second preseason game in a row that he's done that. He's been non-committal about his game plan this week. Their kicker's playing great. Though they had all kinds of miscues on special teams last week. They fumbled the ball on a kick return. They fumbled a punt return. And the kicker, Bates, missed an extra point. And then, the kid Bates hits a 53-yarder last week against the Giants, then a 55-yarder. And then he hits the game winner against to notch the win against KC this past weekend. So I don't know if there's anything bet on in that necessarily. I don't think that Detroit. That being said, the Sudfeld-Hooker combo, that's not a bad duo for Detroit. We'll have to see what the combo looks like this week. But one would anticipate, there's a little bit more urgency for Pittsburgh than for Detroit. But again, week 3 of the preseason, how much does urgency really matter? Coaches looking for clean games, not necessarily looking for starters to make plays. But if we get Fields/Wilson for extended stretches here, you can count on money showing for the Steelers. So that's something if you want to be a little proactive for Pittsburgh. And I haven't done it myself. If you want to be proactive and expect the Steelers to play those two guys for another 10 series this week, there'll be urgency there for Pittsburgh, given that the case, and then they won't be a 3-point favorite. They'll be higher.
Good stuff, Teddy. And yeah, you bring up urgency. I've talked to some VIP watchers out there, actually seeing them in person. I always bring up the fact that I take notes here, guys, of what Teddy's always saying in the NFL opening line report. It's helped me tremendously in my NFL betting. It was my worst sport when I got into this business, and now it's arguably my best over the last 2 or 3 years. A lot due to UTC. And I do remember one urgency kind of angle you brought up week 1 of this show, actually. And it was, I'm just going off the top of my head here, but rookie head coaches that are 0-2 in the NFL preseason, maybe some urgency there in game number 3. So just wanted to bring that up. Obviously week 3 of the NFL X season, but I'll lead us into the next game. Minnesota Vikings, Philadelphia Eagles. We are seeing 34.5 as the total, and pick 'em or -1. That's the Eagles at home in Philadelphia.
Yes, an 0-2 team with a rookie head coach has a little bit more urgency if they're home for game 3. That is very real. But again, it comes down to, in the fourth quarter, if it's a 1-score game, there's urgency for both teams. It is what it is. That's just how football is. So I talked a little bit about the Rams and their preseason success, despite the fact that they don't care. Philly's the same boat. All right. They don't care. Nick Sirianni does not care about winning games in August. That they're 2-0 this preseason. They scored 14 and 13 points in those 2 games. So it has everything to do with the opposing teams and their inability to put the biscuit in the basket. Or maybe we'll give Philly credit for having quality defensive depth. Jalen Hurts sat again this past week. I'm not convinced he's going to play here. The markets have no idea what Philly's going to do, but no one's expecting Hurts. Kenny Pickett played the entire first half, 13 passes, only 67 yards for the Eagles. This is not an offense that's clicking on all cylinders here in August. That being said, the Vikings had a heck of a game in Cleveland. They played great. Jaron Hall, they're supposed to be their number 3 QB. He finished with a perfect 158.3 passer rating. And sorry, sometimes the quotes make me laugh. Hall, of course, playing in the second half of a preseason game, a 5th rounder in 2023. Quote, days like this you cherish forever. It's a game I'll always remember, preseason or not. Didn't have a perfect QB rating. You get some action. He's likely to get a lot more action in this game. And the markets have no idea what to do with it right now. It's sitting right near pick'em. I don't blame them. I don't know what to do with it either.
We got all the 10 a.m. Pacific kicks in the books here, so we'll head 3 hours later. 1 p.m. Pacific up next. Minnesota Vikings, LA Chargers, Dallas Cowboys. Teddy, we are seeing the Cowboys 3 in the hook as the home favorite, 33 in a hook being the total. Chargers at Cowboys.
Yeah, two teams that have some bet against potential in August. Though the Cowboys are coming off a blowout win against the Raiders, look great in that ball game. But Dallas under McCarthy has shown us repeatedly they don't care very much. And coming off a win, they might care even less. And again, it's week 3 of the preseason. It's not about winning necessarily for either of these two teams. And it's a case for Harbaugh. The Chargers are 0-2 this preseason. They've struggled to move the football. Obviously, Justin Herbert's hurt. They're installing a new offense. There's a lot of – they've been clunky, all right. Dicker the kicker came and hit 3 field goals last week. But, the Chargers, along with the Buffalo Bills, are the only teams that haven't scored an offensive touchdown this preseason. Harbaugh, after the game, positive quotes. I feel like we're making improvement. We have to lock in on those details, control the things we control in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. Easton Stick, who was trying to win the backup quarterback job and isn't playing very well and isn't doing it. Quote, I think we executed a little bit better this week, but left a lot out there. Points and yards, that part's frustrating. Stick finished 8 of 13 for 85 yards with an INT, and he's likely to get ample playing time again this week, but not for sure. We got to see what the game plan is. Nonetheless, this is another one of these games where, Dallas laying points. They don't care. Laying more than a field goal. That's how bad the Chargers have looked this August. They've looked, Harbaugh doesn't care either.
We head to New York up next. 127-128-430 Pacific kick here. New York Giants, New York Jets battle for New York. We are seeing the Giants -1 in the hook or -2 as the quote-unquote road favorite. Low total here, Teddy. I believe it's the lowest on the board. What is it? 31.5 as the total. So -1.5, -2. That's the Giants as against the Jets here from MetLife, Teddy.
Yeah, and again, last week at this time, every game, all 16 of them got bet up. There was over steam from not just one bettor, multiple bettors. This week, none of that. Obviously, with unders going 14-2 against the closing number, 13-3 against the openers. Whoever made those bets is a little bit lighter in the wallet this week. And obviously, when it comes to week 3 of the preseason compared to week 2, you expect to see fewer starters, especially for teams that got their starters action last week. So the Jets played Adrian Martinez and Andrew Peasley at quarterback for 60 minutes and won a game against Carolina. That is not a bet-on duo. I would not be surprised to see them go again this week. The Giants got Daniel Jones back on the field, which he needed to get some of the rust off. And oops, Jones threw 2 picks. The Giants turned the ball over 5 times. Brian DeBall, you don't give yourself much of a chance when you turn the ball over. It's obviously something we need to improve on. So that's what we'll try to do. Danny Dimes after the game, quote, I feel good physically. The knee felt really good. I was excited to be out there. And of course, that game was, was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. It was Texans' third stringers were better than the Giants' third stringers. I'm not surprised the Giants are favorites. I'm not surprised the Giants are taking early money. And if you like the Giants, again, I don't want to put too much into it for the preseason I'm having. That's been haven't gotten anything right, but I would guesstimate this line's much more likely to go up than go down. If you like the Giants, I bet them sooner rather than later. This would be, if it was regular season, this might be an emergency betting alert type of scene.
Get ready for those emergency betting alerts, guys, as regular season right around the corner. We got one game left here. Saturday Get Back Special, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. And hey, it's NFL preseason. I think this fits the bill for the degenerate special. Cleveland Browns, Seattle Seahawks. Teddy, we are seeing flip favorite here with the Browns now -1 in the hook as the road favorite, 34.5 being the total. Browns at Seahawks from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, there might be some urgency too here for Cleveland if you like the Cleveland side of the equation. Here's what I read this morning, quote, Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson spent his second straight game on the sideline. He's scheduled to play next week at Seattle. His first action since a season-ending shoulder injury in November. So Watson, in theory, is supposed to come in and get the rust off here. And Jameis Winston, he sat out this past week. I don't know if we're going to see him this week. There's a decent chance that we will. If we see both Watson and Winston, we're going to see a lot of Browns money in this ballgame. And, I mean, Cleveland, they moved the ball up and down the field against Minnesota. Tyler Huntley and Dorian Thompson-Robinson combined, 27 completions, 232 yards, but 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Both the quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks, made mistakes at crucial times in the ball game. Sam Howell got all the first half playing time, making his case to back up Geno Smith for Seattle, and he looked pretty good in that ball game. Sam Howell, of course, started every game for the Commanders last year. 11 of 14, 153 yards and a touchdown. He had a pass rating of 136, and Seattle had a 12-7 lead when he left the game. But every starter was on the sidelines with Geno Smith and company, and that's likely to be the case again this week. So I would not be surprised at all if we see Cleveland take a little bit of money.
We'll head down to the Big Easy up next, starting the Sunday, August 25th card here, guys. 11 a.m. Pacific kick. Tennessee Titans, New Orleans Saints. Looks like 34 and a half being the total. -3 in the hook. That's the Titans is the road favorite here, Teddy.
Yeah, and of all the games, I have quotes. I got this and that and the other. I got nothing on this game. I really have nothing. New Orleans took some betting attention in their game against San Francisco because the 49ers were sitting everyone and it didn't matter. New Orleans got the attention. They did not end up getting the money. And again, a team that, Dennis Allen is not putting emphasis on winning games in the preseason. And New Orleans, a team that has depth concerns, not a team that's likely to be playing starters for extended stretches. Tennessee, the team with the more urgency, clearly, but you're laying a premium with that. 3.5. No joke. All these, how many games got decided by a field goal or less last week? Half? More? Laying points this August has been, laying more than a field goal this August has been a rather tricky endeavor in a lot of instances. And I'm not convinced that there's a rationale for me to get to the window with Tennessee doing that.
We got next one up, the middle game here, 133, 134, Arizona Cardinals, Denver Broncos, 130 Pacific kick here. As it opened 36 and a half, -3.5. That's the Broncos as the road favorite. We are seeing -4 now, Broncos a mile high. So 35-36 now being the total. It's Arizona at Denver, Teddy.
Yeah, Denver's home chalk here. Tennessee's road chalk in New Orleans, but Denver's home chalk against Arizona. Arizona, and it's, is Bo Nix the starter? Well, Sean Payton wasn't willing to name him that, but it feels like that might be the case. They did get touchdown from all three quarterbacks, touchdown drives, but Nix was pretty good in that ballgame. 8 of 9 for 90 yards, 140.7 QB rating in that ballgame. Denver has a bet-on trio when it comes to winning games in August. In Arizona, not necessarily so much. Now, it's worth noting the Cardinals didn't play anyone this past week. Just about all the starters, Marvin Harrison Jr. sat in that ballgame. Clayton Tune was the QB. And then Desmond Ridder came into the second half. And Desmond Ridder, I don't know, I've had enough. I said it last week. I've had enough of that quarterback. Desmond Ridder is one of these guys who I've given the benefit of the doubt 400 different times. And here it is. He's in a preseason game against third stringers, and the offense doesn't move. So Ridder's not a guy we can give. The more playing time for Ridder, the less you want Arizona. We'll leave it at that. And that may well be the case. And, of course, Arizona had as many penalties as first downs. The quote after the game from Jonathan Gannon, it's hard to get a rhythm when you have the ball and you're going backwards. We weren't ready to play today mentally, and that's on me. That is a potential bet-on quote for the next game, except for that Denver, in 2 games under Peyton, they've shown a fair bit of urgency as well, and they've got a stronger QB combo as you're going to find this side of the Houston Texans. So could be bet on versus bet on in this game. One of those games where I'm a little bit disappointed Team A is matched up against Team B.
Teddy, we got last game here for the NFL preseason. New England Patriots, Washington, former football team. This opened 35 and a half being the total, -2 in the hook. That's Commanders as the home favorite. But now we're seeing some dog money and some under money as it's -1 in the hook here with Washington at home. 34 flat being the total. So it's New England at Washington to end it, Teddy.
Look, the Patriots are as strong an under team as I can't say ever, but the Patriots, if you watch New England, there's not a weapon on offense that's going to create a big play touchdown. All right? There's not one. There's not a quarterback. I mean, if May plays, May's got a big arm, but Jacoby Brissett's not throwing the ball downfield. And Brissett was really underwhelming last week. 3 and out in the first possession. He threw a bad pick in the end zone on the second possession. 3 and out in the third possession. Hit the bench, kid. 3 of 7 for 17 yards. It is worth noting what Mayo did at the end of the game. After they fell behind, they led the whole game against Philly, and then the Eagles went and scored a touchdown to put them and hit the 2-point conversion to go up 1. Mayo sat the rookie Joe Milton and put in the veteran Bailey Zappi for that last drive. And, of course, they moved the ball, had a couple of first downs, and then a bad snap. And so much for the comeback. But he was trying to win the game, which is worth noting. And, again, that was a home game for New England. It may not matter as much here. But that's one of those things that sticks in my mind. That was the coach who put in a different quarterback to try to win a preseason game, whatever that's worth. As for Washington, Jane Daniels has been solid so far. He was solid this past week in Miami. Of course, they had all kinds. The Washington did not execute very well in Miami territory in that ball game, being that there were lots of field goal attempts and missing field goals and all of that. Daniels after the game, quote, "Go out there and just trying to execute at a high level. I wish we would have finished with some touchdowns, but we did put the team in position to score some points." And, of course, they had a chance to make things interesting at the end. Got inside the 10-yard line and then were stopped on downs, held to just 6 points for the contest. Not surprised at all that we're seeing under money. As far as I'm concerned, any Patriots game moving forward, if you're not betting the under, you're leaving money on the table. This is a strong and under team. I don't want to hyperbole. They're a strong under team. The offense can't do anything. The defense might be pretty good. And the market's moving that way this morning.
In Teddy, would that translate to the regular season as well, or is this just kind of, hey, week 3 of the preseason, then we're changing our tune?
No, that's for the regular season.
Okay.
Yeah, the Patriots are as strong. I mean, they're as strong an under team as I can remember. Because I think if the defense is as good as they might be, every game's going to be 13-10, 16-13, 10-7. Their offense has no playmakers, and their defense, as long as it doesn't get worn down, will keep them in games.
Like it. Patriots towards the under. Guys, thanks for chiming in. A bunch of you guys in the chat box. Not many questions, but a whole lot of opinions. So all that's welcome for sure. Titan CT, Ray in the house, Aubrey as well. All of you guys, appreciate you chiming in. Feel free to chime in the comments below. Any questions, we'll hit them as the show goes on. Each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, NFL opening line report. I am Drew Martin, joined by Teddy Covers. Guys, we got the specials up. WagerTalk.com. We got with the 7-day special discounted. You can grab Teddy's, mine, any WagerTalk handicapper out there. You get MLB, NFL, college football coming your way here shortly. So check that one out. Teddy, I'll throw it over to you, man. Any final thoughts for the show before we shut this down?
Yeah. So again, Drew, we're going to do it again next week. We're going to have 2 NFL shows for week 1. Next week's show, we're going to talk a little bit more about the broader marketplace. And then the week of the games, Labor Day Monday, we'll actually break down what the week 1 openers are. So next week's show is going to be a little bit different format. I mean, we'll talk about the games, but Drew's going to be in transit. It may be a funky show, but we'll be here doing it one way or another. Don't you worry about it right here. And, of course, what Drew was talking about, the likes make all the difference for us, guys. They really do. So if you do like the show, if you like this type of free content every week, just a quick like. That's all we ask. If you want to comment, that's great. And again, we love to answer the questions. If you want to be one of the more than 165,000 people that have subscribed to the WagerTalk YouTube channel, that's great as well. If you want to visit my webpage, wt.buzz/TC, or Drew's page, wt.buzz/DM. Both of us, obviously, from WagerTalk.com. You can do so and get on board with any of our short or long-term packages. Other than that, enjoy the games. Good luck. hopefully you guys had a better weekend than I did when it comes to NFL preseason betting. I'm glad to get this crap out of the way now in August, because it ain't going to be. If I have a week like I had this last couple of weeks in September, I'm not going to be smiling on a Monday morning. Not a chance. Not even maybe.
Huge shout out to Dan Alexander as well, behind the scenes in the producer's role. He's Teddy Covers. I'm Drew Martin. Check it out, guys. Come back next week, Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Comment below. Smash that like button. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.